So the first time I was contacted by Manchester Art Gallery, I received a really exciting email from Rebecca Milner, who's a curator there. And she told me that she had this exhibition they were doing called Artist in the Frame, which was also a collaboration between National Portrait Gallery's work. It's quite an unusual setting for a comic book artist to be in a fine art gallery. And I kind of was very nervous at first and kind of thinking, what can I contribute to this? And then I reminded myself that I was there to do what I do, which is tell stories with pictures. I was a storyteller, and I really wanted to find a story inside the Van Dyck, which was my story and which I had the right to tell. The Van Dyck had this most incredibly elaborate frame, and there's stories around the edges of the frame, the symbolism of the dolphins and of Charles I, this sunflower. I looked at Rubens and Van Dyck's work, as well as a lot of examples of decorative, ornate frames, and really started to think about how I wanted to incorporate that into my work. At first, I really struggled with this idea of doing a self-portrait. I felt really uncomfortable about kind of exposing a version of myself. I started to think about it, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be fantastic to look at the many different versions of myself and have this kind of frame which depicted a battle between all the different versions of myself fighting to be shown inside the frame, and that the frame inside would be blank. I wanted to kind of depict not only a battle between all my many selves fighting for representation in the frame, but also I wanted to kind of look at the process by which artists create art and which selves come to the foreground as this process continues. So it starts off with that excitement, that anxiety, and I had these little red selves kind of biting and nipping at the bottom of the frame. And then from that bursts this kind of energetic self. So she kind of zooms out of the frame. She's like this blue, light, energetic self. But then she becomes manic and twisted up in her ideas and her thoughts. And at that point, the performative self strangles her and kills her. Then she gets her neck bitten by this destructive self. And that self is that one which you get when you're lying in bed at night and those voices are going round and round in your head telling you, why do you bother, and what are you doing, and is it worth it anyway? And then what you had afterwards was the kind of destructive self vomits out this kind of vulnerable, depressive self who doesn't have any skin. But all the while through the story, we've had this tiny little playful self who's been skipping around and swinging and playing. And she's kind of like the child self who just enjoys making things. And eventually she kind of curls up and falls asleep in the kind of meditative self. And she gives birth to this energetic self who goes diving right back into the anxious selves. And so the circle continues. It was interesting doing this piece because it was the first time I've done such a large scale kind of paper cutout, and the first time I've ever done a self-portrait. It did kind of fit in with previous themes which I've explored, and there's a very strong link between my graphic novel Death of the Artist and this piece. But what this Selves Portrait also did was it took my work in a different direction. It really forced me to kind of, in much more of an honest way, look at my own work. And also to kind of understand how you can create one single piece to tell a narrative. We've got so much more space when you write in a graphic novel. You've got so many more pages to explore your story. And with this work, it had to be done very concisely in one single piece. Once you've finished your piece and it's off your table, the relationship isn't between the artist and the audience, it's between the work and the audience. And it's their work to bounce their own ideas off. We had some events and workshops, which we did at Manchester. We also had a lot of people taking selfies, which was great. I mean, that's what every artist wants. I mean, I want my work to be interactive. I want people to be able to bring their own stories to it and to take selfies with. Why not?